Bismillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. We're going to continue with the topic of the Islamic identity, and I think it's a very important topic. This time we're going to look at modes of Islamic identity, which means there's not only one shade, there's many shades, depending on how you practice Islam. Okay? So the problem is sometimes, especially when you're a youth or adolescence, your identity is forming, okay? And really, when you reach, like they say, at the age of 21, that's when you kind of fully develop, your brain develops. But before that, your identity also is developing, and you move like from when you're not mature, you're a child, Islamically. You're not fully developed. So when you become a mature person, you become responsible, and then you have your own identity. You take responsibility for your own actions. So it could be some people would end up, like as you see in this picture, putting on different faces, which kind of shows like hypocrisy. But we're going to look at it also involves not only hypocrisy, but it's basically a stage the person is going through. So they say there's 4 modes of religious identity or subjectivity. And this word subjectivity, I don't really like to use it because it means that it could be true or it could be false, but we're saying religion in general. Islam is true, but it just talks about here how you practice Islam. It's not talking about Islam, but I'm talking about how you practice Islam. So here, there's depending on how you explore what you've explored and your commitment, then you would have an identity. So when we say exploration, it doesn't mean that you go and try out different religions, but it means that you've basically learned about other religions, especially living in a non-Muslim country, different sects within Islam, why they're different, Christians, why they're different to you. So you know who you are when you compare to other people. You just don't follow anybody, but you're not basically having a confusion anymore. It's kind of finished. But some people, they have a confusion where they're acting like remember we talked about how some people are acting like non-Muslims. It's a bit like that. It becomes like their identity is inside is Islam, but outside is not Islam. So they're exploring like different things, which is could cause different identities. So there's achieved, foreclosed, moratorium, and diffusion. When you explored and you have a commitment, so that means you have achieved identity. I'll explain that. When you have no exploration, you haven't explored, and you have no commitment, or you have commitment, that's foreclosed, no commitment and no exploration. There's some exploration, moratorium, and then diffusion, which means you have no commitment, no exploration. But I'll show you this is all within Muslims. We're not talking about non-Muslims. So the first one is the foreclosed mode of religious identity, which is that someone who has a religious commitment because he was born a Muslim, his parents are Muslim, but he hasn't explored like what that means to him, okay, fully. So for example, he's he's learned at madrasa, he's got information about Islam, Islamic knowledge, parents passed on to him, he learned at the madrasa, but he's missing something. So he hasn't made any sense of it for himself Islamically. So what does it mean to pray for me? My relationship with Allah, and that if someone's just doing it for his parents, so he's practicing when he's near his parents, but he's not practicing when he's at college, then this is a sign of a foreclosed identity. Also, he just thinks about his family, or please, when he's with the Muslims, he's practicing, but he's with the non-Muslims, he changes. So this is a problem. It could be a bit like hypocrisy. So he has instructed himself properly. It's more basically formed. It's basic. Example of someone like that would be someone who says, like we talk about some pressing issues like going out with girls, drinking and mixing freely with the people at the college. Especially this happens when you people go to college. But we know that there's no way around it. It's laughing. and he says, we know that our parents will not allow us, and it's against the religion. And I know if we were committed Muslims, we would do exactly what is required from us. But sometimes I myself do feel weak, and I talk to girls, but I really shouldn't mix with them. So this is a guy who goes to college, and he's been going to madrasa. He understands what it's halal, haram, but he hasn't implemented it in his life properly. He was just mainly doing it for his parents. And so that's what the first one. You guys understand that? You understand that?
Yes, Ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is diffused mode of religious subjectivity or identity. It's like someone who doesn't show any interest in religion, religious rules. He doesn't want to learn. He doesn't want to explore, like learn about his religion, and he has no commitment. Okay. A good example of that is someone who says, "I feel like there's a lot of difference between me and myself and my parents." And the culture they grew up in is very different. Coming to a new country has been scary for them. But I'm growing up in English culture. My life is going to be different. I cannot really explain this, but I feel it. For example, going out is always a problem for my parents. I think all Asian kids have this problem. So he's an 18-year-old. He's talking about. You can see now, he doesn't really show any commitment. We can see another statement here. He says, when I reflect on my religion, my relation to Islam, my relation to religion, Islam, I would say I became over the years less religious. So when people, after they start college, and then things have changed, and I have more freedom to choose things, to do things, I would say that my Muslim friends have undergone a similar change at college. There's some of my Muslim friends who have become more religious, but I don't think their numbers is high. We are all mixing with the wilder culture. So you can see here, he doesn't really have a commitment. He grew up as a Muslim in a Muslim family, but when he goes to college, he doesn't really care too much about learning Quran and learning Islamic studies and going to madrasa, even though he's missing a lot of it, information. And he doesn't even understand who's Shia, who's Sunni, why is there different schools of thought, what's the history behind the Quran, the Sunnah, or what we learned in the other book. Also, another thing would be, I've been under, like if you tell him to come to madrasa, but I've been under too much stress recently at the college. There's a lot of work to do. It's pretty hard to find time to pray, so they don't find time to pray. But I go to Jum'ah Fridays. Now I stop. So they stop Jum'ah as well after a while, and it makes him feel guilty because at home nobody knows if he's praying Jum'ah or not. He just doesn't really care anymore. So that's a dangerous one. Another one also is when a person's searching for he wants to learn and he hasn't really committed, which is a problem as well. So somebody who's like that, it's also still dangerous. So he says, I feel like I'm having a dual life. I speak with my parents in broken Urdu, for us with broken Somali. I express myself in English with my friends at the college. I deeply respect Islam and I want to practice it in my life, but I have many gaps in my understanding of Islam. Okay? I like going out with my friends, understanding things for myself. I just don't know which way I'm going to end up with. When I think of my own children, the picture becomes bleak. So that person doesn't really know what they're going to become. Muslim, non-Muslim, they have no commitment. They're not committed to Islam, which is, again, dangerous. So the person who hasn't achieved, are you guys with me?
Yes.
Yeah, so the person who hasn't achieved identity, someone who has Islamic commitment, he's committed to Islam, he's a Muslim, he believes and he's committed, he's practicing it. He has fairly sufficient knowledge, understanding of Islam. He doesn't have to be a scholar, but he understands it. And he's gone under the exploration process, which is like what I taught you, the history, the heritage of, to understand your Islamic identity and how, what it means to be Muslim. So it doesn't mean he tries different religions, but he knows why you're Sunni and that guy's Shia, why you're Muslim and he's Christian, why you're different. So you don't imitate them. Also, he's kind of reasoned with Islamic content, which means he understands why he should be praying, not when his parents are standing there or he's with his parents, but he's praying for himself. It means something to him personally. You understand? Not to. So this is also mentioned in a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ compared it to rain and how people react to the Quran and Sunnah. And he said the similitude of that guidance, the knowledge with which Allah has given him and he sent him, it's like rain falling on the ground, on the earth. So like different grounds, how they, or lands, how they receive. The first one, it would take the rain and it would take it in, and then it would grow grass and herbage and then people will benefit from it. They will eat from it, and animals will eat from it. So he's benefited, and it shows in him, and he's someone who's basically he knows what it means. So compared to that grass, like that land, someone who's absorbed it, and it shows on him, and he's accepted it. And people, but the other one is like land which is hard and barren, but it holds the water. So animals drink from it, people drink from it, but he's not really benefiting from it. So it's a bit of hypocrisy. Like he's taken in the knowledge, he's went to madrasa, learned Quran, but he's not really practicing it. But others are, he's quoting the ayahs for other people, and so that's also not really that beneficial. Then there's a land which is barren, which it doesn't hold the water, it doesn't grow any grass. So that's like the person who doesn't really care, okay? Like the diffused identity, no commitment, doesn't really care. So the Prophet ﷺ said the first one is like someone has an understanding of the religion, okay? The second one, someone who's learned the religion and he passes it on. And then the third one is someone who doesn't really care. So that's the three modes. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we've given the Quran to our slaves. Some of them, they've wronged themselves. Some of them, they stayed in the middle. And some of them, they are winning, like they're at the forefront. So I think Salah is going to start for us now. So if I move on from that, what happens is the person, he shouldn't be, so the people who wrong themselves, who are oppressing themselves, they're the ones with the diffused identity, and the one with the foreclosed, someone who just doesn't really care, he's going to neglect he's going to be in this category. And the person who doesn't know why he's Muslim, he probably end up oppressing himself as well, or he might end up praying sometimes not praying. So you have to be someone who fulfills the duties, stays away from the haram, and then if you do the desired acts and stay away from the disliked acts. So the one who's in the middle does the minimum, and the one who's the forerunner, I would say the forerunner could be the one who has achieved identity. It could be the forerunner, or it could be in the middle. But the diffused and the foreclosed, they fall into the people who wrong themselves. So you have to be careful, because these people who only practice for their parents, they will have these signs of being like a hypocrite. As these ayats say, there's between two, between at school, at college, they act like the non-Muslims and mix with them and just be like them. And at home, they'll be fully Muslim, but that's dangerous. And then this ayah talks about people who worship Allah as if they're on the edge. Okay? So if life is going good, they will be happy. If life goes bad, there's fitna, they'll fall on their faces and lose everything. So Wallahu A'lam, I think the time is up for me. But what did you learn from this lesson?